We'll now look at an example of how we would include and use resources by creating animations in our applications. What we're going to do now is go over an example of taking an image in our application and actually move it across the screen. It's really neat when it's done, but we need to know how to use our resources to do that. So let's say we have an image and we add it to our resources. For our purposes, we'll call this image name. Obviously, it won't really be called image name when we actually do it, but let's just say we call it image name for our purposes. So what we can do is add a picture box in our form, and this picture box will contain the image. We've already gone over how to do picture boxes, so you should be familiar with how to add a picture box and do all the settings. So for our purposes, we'll call this picture box PB1. You can call it whatever you want, but I'm just going to use PB1. And then we need to set the image property to the actual image file. So what we would do is we can set pb1.image to be my.resources.imageName. Remember, to access any resource files, we would have my.resources. The name of that file. So in this case, we would do my.resources.imageName. And for our example here, we'll actually set the starting coordinates of our picture here to be at 0, 100. Now, adding the image alone isn't enough to actually move the image. And to also give that appearance of it moving, we have to do something at regular time intervals. Fortunately, we have a tool that lets us do that in Visual Basic. The way we do this is we'd have to create a timer for the project. And a timer just allows us to perform operations at regular time intervals, such as, I don't know, moving an image over every second. Yeah, I think that would count as a timer operation. So the way we do this is we would add a timer tool. So it's just in our toolbox like anything else, but we have to place it outside the form. I'm actually not so sure why that's the case, but when I did it, I had to put it outside of it to make it work, but we'll just go with it. But we had to place the timer tool outside the form, and to start the actual timer, there is a start method that's associated with that particular timer object. And we would have to call this method inside our forms load method. So remember, by default, we would have like form1 underscore load, and that would be automatically called when we start the application. Inside the body of that sub, we would have to call the start method from our timer object. So for example, if the timer object we create is called timer1, then we would have to have timer1.start to actually start the timer. It just doesn't do it automatically. And then there is a second method called the tick method, and this is called every second. And this allows us to decide what operation we actually perform every second. So as we'll see in a little bit, what we'll do is every second we move the object or our image over just a little bit. That way we get that appearance of it actually moving. No, it's not just appearance, it actually is moving. The way we will move the picture is we have to do actually several things. But the main thing is we need to change the coordinates of our picture so that every second we change the horizontal part of it, the x coordinate of our picture. So the way we're going to do that is in our code, we're going to create a global integer, which we're going to call t. Initially, this will be 0, and we're going to use this to move the image. So we'll do something with the value t every second. So this is kind of like our timer value. We'll also create a point object. We'll call it p in this case, and this is going to start at 0, 100. So this was the initial location of our picture. So this point object is going to be what we modify to move the image over every second. So the next thing we need to do is actually modify our tick method. So we can actually change the location of our image inside of this method. The way we'll do this is we'll first change the value of p.x. So remember, p is the name of our point object, and x is our x coordinate value. So we'll change this value based on the value of t. So like, for example, whenever we have t, depending on what value t is, maybe we'll multiply it by 10. That means what we'll do is every second it'll move to 10, and then 20, then 30, and so forth. But we'll change the value of px based on whatever t is, and then we can update the location of our picture box by using this value of px. So we can just assign the location property of pb1 to be the value of our point object. So that means we'll store the x and y values of p into the location property of pb1. Hence, since we're moving it over, we're having that moving effect happen every single second. We'll then increment t by 1. That way, every second we change the value of t, it's increasing, which means our x value is always increasing, which means we're going to be moving our picture to the right every single second. We'll now go ahead and actually implement the code that we've been talking about lately, where we would move an image by using the timer approaches that we were talking about. So here's Visual Studio, and what we'll do is create a new project for this. So we'll click on New Project, and then we'll call this, I'm going to say Move Image Application. Yeah, that works. So we'll create the project. So we're going to need two things for this to work. We're going to need a picture box. So let's go ahead and add a picture box. So let's find picture box. There we go. And we also need our timer. So that should be down here. We'll click on timer. And notice that the timer is set outside of the form. It's set down here, and that's fine. We're going to leave it here. This is not something that we would put on the form itself. It just kind of runs on the side here. So now we're going to take our image, or a picture box I should say, and we're going to do a couple things with it. So I want to set the initial location to be 0, 100. There we go. And I want to, I'm actually going to make this a little bigger. So let's make this a little bigger. That's pretty good. And then we need a picture for it. So we're going to go to Image. And we need to import a resource. So let's find a picture to add here. So let's do these pictures again. Let's go with penguins. Everyone likes penguins, right? We'll reenact our own March of the Penguins, okay? So we'll click OK. And we need to stretch the image to make it fit. So go to size mode, set it to stretch image. There we go. So we're going to march the penguins over from one side of the form to the other. That's what we're going to do here. So we need to go into the code portion of our program so we can actually make this work. So what we need to do is we're first going to create some global variables. We need to have t to be our counter variable that's going to help with our timer. So up here we're going to do, let's see here if I can click here, we'll go public t as integer equals 0. And then we're going to create a point structure. So we're going to do public p as point. Okay. And then we need to add our timer procedure. So let's go back to our form real quick, or design. And if we double click on timer 1, we get a sub procedure that handles the event of a tick of the timer, which means this sub procedure is going to execute every time the timer ticks. And here I believe the tick is every second. So the way we're going to do this is we need to set the x coordinates of our picture box. So we're going to do p.x, and we're going to set it to t times 10. So we're going to move it over 10 pixels to the right every second. So now we need to update our location. So we probably need to make sure I set a name for our picture box. I don't think I've done that yet. So let's go back here and fix that, because I don't want to do write out picture box 1. We'll do pb1. Yeah, that's better. So now we'll go back here and do pb1.location, and we're going to set it to p. And then we need to increment t by 1. So we can do plus equals 1. All right. So let's go ahead and run the code as is and see what happens. So we'll click on start. And there's our penguins, but it's not moving. And I did this intentionally. It's not a mistake. What happens here is after we set this up, we still have to start the timer. It doesn't happen automatically. So in our form1_load procedure, we need to say timer1.start. So that way, as soon as the form loads, we'll start the timer, and this will move our penguin. So let's run this again, and we'll watch them march. See, there we go. Now it moved up to the top. So that's not exactly what we want. So we need to make an adjustment here. I think part of that is because we did not initialize the y part of the coordinate. So we're just going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to put this right here. P dot y equals 100. There we go. That should fix everything. So let's try this one more time. Click start. And there we go. There goes our penguins marching off to the screen. There it goes. So sure enough, that's how we can move an image.